It's a little too wet, Curtis.
All right, try now.
Yeah, I like this better.
Okay.
Um,
There's a touch of reverb. I didn't want it
yeah,
completely dry. There's a touch,
yeah.
but there was some ambiance that was in there that I took
Okay,
out. So
okay.
you're set.
We're ready to record?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, hi everyone. This is Depression Grove podcast, and today I have Dana Kalnick here as my guest, and we're going to talk about art and depression.
Ooh.
So, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell them a little bit about what you do. First and foremost, tell them about your diagnoses, if you have any, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, cool. Hi, my name is Dana Kalnick. I'm 26 and I'm an illustrator from the greater Philadelphia area. For work, I do design, illustration, and comic art. I typically work in the motion design industry as well as alternative graphic novels. And in terms of diagnoses, I guess, over the last, say, 10 years, I've been diagnosed with depression and generalized anxiety disorder. I also struggle with IBS, which can be kind of like informed by my anxiety and depression. And I think for the most part, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, I got it.
Curtis is over there taking pictures.
Hi.
So, today I wanted to have you on because as an artist, I understand that the arts can be very healing for depression and for anxiety and things like that. So, can you speak about how your art affects or impacts your symptoms or your depression and your anxiety in any way?
Yeah, I guess I kind of haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it in terms of how my art affects my depression and anxiety, but more so about how my depression and anxiety affect my art making ability. Because I've been drawing since I could hold a pencil. My dad is an illustrator, so I kind of grew up in that environment of like constantly drawing, and especially like when I was a kid and I was maybe anxious or shy or felt like I wanted to be alone, or even if I was alone, I really put a lot into art making to kind of take up my time. But so I think in college is when I first really realized and had a diagnosis for depression and anxiety. Because I think I was in the midst of my sophomore year, and I was having a lot of like IBS issues. Like I wouldn't be able to go to class because my stomach hurt so bad, and it would last for like hours and hours. And often like I'd like have a meal and then I'd have to like lay down for hours, and I was so sick that I couldn't even really like work, like draw in at home.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I needed to do something so that I wouldn't like fail my classes and have to leave school. So I started to see one of the counselors that the school offered, and I was kind of finally able to work through some of what I was experiencing. Like I was able to kind of identify like what it was with like a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And but I was really kind of going through it. But so that kind of like stopped my art making for a while. And once I kind of got back on track, it got easier as time goes on. But oftentimes I feel like my art making process stops or like is put on hold when maybe like my symptoms start to flare up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I guess if I had to say like how my art making can help with it, I guess it's just that like it's something that you can really like meditate and focus on, and it can help you kind of like work through like maybe when a time when you need to like take space for yourself, you can kind of like use art to take up that space. Yeah. To work through things. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So, just a side note, when you're speaking into the mic, try to bring it a little closer to your mouth.
Okay, yeah.
So that we can get more volume, more level.
Okay.
But that's really cool because I really understand that. I've also been drawing since I could hold a pencil. So but for me it's much harder because I actually went on I had what's not an artist block. There we go.
Yes, yeah.
So I had an artist block for so long. It lasted so many years due to depression and anxiety. So, that really hurts the art that or should I say my skills now, because I couldn't develop them in a time when I really needed to develop them.
Right.
So I understand entirely where you're coming from in that sense.
Yeah.
I think.
No, you're fine.
Okay. So I definitely understand where you're coming from with that. For me, it's actually the opposite because when I draw, I feel more anxious than when I'm not drawing.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. I think especially like as an adult, like I think that's more of like a prominent thing, especially like I can relate to that because like there's a lot of pressure to be good, to be professional. There's a lot of eyes on you,
Mm-hmm.
and that can kind of really ruin your vibe and like the momentum that you're trying to build when you're creating.
Yeah, definitely. She's covering herself from the camera right now.
That one didn't work because you turned away anyway.
Good.
So
I'll go over there.
No, okay.
I'm not afraid.
see, it's very casual, nothing to worry about. So all of this is going on, by the way. I'm not editing any of this out.
Oh my god. Okay. All my awful pauses and like
No.
That's the charm.
Yeah, it's the charm of having, a podcast be about communication and talking. So, pauses, just like in music, silence is so important to what you're saying.
Woo! Sorry.
So, there's Curtis. So, it's okay. I have a lot of pauses too. I think a lot, so.
Yeah.
But, wow, we're only at 9 minutes? Woo! We have a lot to talk about. So, tell me more about your experience with depression and anxiety. Like, when do you think it first started? Like, was it before college or was it because of college or?
Yeah, no, it definitely was before college. I mean, I think it's hard to say, but I think that maybe, like I started to kind of feel it or notice it when I was a kid even. Like maybe when I was in elementary school or middle school, like my parents divorced when I think I was maybe like in 3rd grade. And so I think oftentimes, you can kind of develop, like anxiety or depression or stuff like that from big life events that like that. But yeah, so I think, and I felt it through like middle school and high school. And I went for so long without understanding what it was, and yeah, it really took me until I was in college to properly have it kind of like addressed. Yeah.
Did you ever talk about it?
I think I talked about it through art a lot. And it's not to say that like anyone really saw that art that I was making, but I knew like when I was in middle school and like I was isolating myself and I was listening to very sad music and the art that I'm making was very sad or maybe like a cry for help, in a lot of ways. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually never talked about my depression until I was in college.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always very interesting how things like that start off at a very young age. And for me, I felt like I knew what it was. Like I couldn't put a name to it because obviously I'm a kid and I don't really know what depression is.
Yeah, right.
We were born in a time where depression and anxiety just wasn't really developed as a thing or as a topic to be discussed.
Yeah.
So no one really told us that, hey, if you're feeling this way, this is what it's called. But I knew like there was a problem. I knew that I was constantly sad. I knew that I was constantly isolating as well. That's
big symptom.
Yeah, definitely. One of the biggest symptoms, really.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't really talking to anyone about anything.
Yeah.
And I never really bothered to tell my parents, like, oh, I'm feeling, some type of way, XYZ, and things like that. But I think a part of me, like, didn't want to tell them because every time I, let's say, talked, they would talk over me and didn't pay attention to what I would say. We even had family therapy, and I still couldn't even talk or discuss anything,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's family therapy when you're a kid is something else.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like during that time, family therapy wasn't really, it just wasn't what it is now. Family therapy now is like, okay, let's really try to get to the bottom of the problem. Let's give everyone a voice and try to discuss everything that we need to. But back then it was like, okay, you guys are having an argument. Stop arguing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know. It was just the way that I grew up. Depression wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
I've been told so many times, like, it's just a phase. It's gonna pass. It's definitely not a phase.
No, yeah, it's something that a lot of people live with daily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have experience like now that are you more open about it now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like I'm more open to saying to people in my life, like, like, hey, like I'm really going through it right now, and I like this is what it is. This is why. Like the other day, my dad came to me and he said, hey, like I'm a little bit concerned with you. I'm a little bit worried. You haven't been at work as often as you should be, or and it finally got to the point where I was like, like I'm really struggling right now. I'm having a time, like I just don't, and for example, like having like disinterest, I guess, or feeling like apathetic, or just like, like you can't get out of bed. distracted. I was feeling like really foggy and super tired constantly, and it's so hard to create when you're feeling like that, for one, and it's already hard to create when it's your livelihood and it's how you make your money. So like layers and layers of really difficult things to kind of work through. Yeah.
No, I get that entirely.
Yeah.
I used to take an art class when I was in college, and my depression got so bad, like I got to the point of suicide and things like that. And it definitely did affect like the amount of work that I was producing, even for a class. Like, the only reason I even produced something was because there was an assignment due, and it was like last minute, real quick before this class starts. Let me just throw something on this page and call it a day. Tell the teacher I'm still working on it or something, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and sometimes that's all you can really do.
Yeah.
That's all you can kind of offer. Yeah, and I definitely, like, something that I often do, like, and I've been going to therapy a lot recently, and to try to work through like days when I just cannot work. And in general, like, I'm just trying to work on my relationship with art in therapy, because I need it to get better, so I can live like as an artist. But she always tells me, like, when you're at work and you feel like you can't do it and you want to step away, do the opposite.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
and not that
Opposite
doesn't
action.
Yeah, right. And that doesn't always mean like if you can't work, you make yourself work, but it's just being in that mindset, like that space of working, can help. And sometimes, like, there are days when I try that, and when it doesn't work, all I can do is go upstairs and lay in bed and just cry because I'm so frustrated about it. But even doing that is kind of helpful sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're still expressing the emotion. So I guess either way, instead of bottling it up, you're letting yourself express it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I guess that's something.
Yeah. So that's very helpful. I have a hard time with that.
Do you?
Yeah.
Which part of that?
Of all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, when I'm not in the mood of working, and mind you, right now it's not like I have a job. I don't get paid for anything that I do. I wish I did. But, when I'm not, I still have stories that I write. I still have a blog. I still have a podcast. I still, technically it's still
you are
work,
working. Yeah, absolutely.
So when I'm not in the mood to work, it's just so frustrating. And like the other day, I was sitting here and I was like, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do anything. And then I was like, you know what? I should write another episode for the story. Like, I should just do it. And at first it was so hard to focus. It was so hard to focus, and I just couldn't understand what I was doing, really. It was more of like, I'm just going to type and mindlessly type, and this is going to turn out very bad. And I kind of came to terms with that, and I was like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm still doing something. Know?
That's another big thing too, is like, you making bad work is still part of working.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And even if you're like done at the end of the day and you're grumpy and pissed about the bad work that you made, at least you made it, So when you come back to it the next day, you're back in that mindset, and maybe you're still building that momentum, to be better. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I've noticed it's like on a bad day when there have been times where I'm just so depressed and I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to try to draw something. And I start drawing and then I just scribble it off. I'm just like, I don't like this. It looks terrible. And then the next day or, a few days later, I'm fine again and I come back to it and I'm like, that didn't look that bad.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah.
Yeah.
You give yourself some time and space. You come back to the work you did and you're like, oh, wait, that's not so bad.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I wish I wouldn't have scribbled it off because I could have done something with this.
Right. Yeah.
So, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In college, a lot of professors would say something about like, you have to build up like time with drawing. Like it's a certain amount of minutes that you put in your lifetime. And when you reach that amount of time, whatever it is, like, like 17,000 minutes or something like that, like at that point, you're going to be better because you've done the time, you know?
Yeah, that's with anything, really.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have to put in the time.
Yeah.
If you don't put in the time, you're not going to be good.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like music, it's like writing, art, anything of that nature. And even like regular work, if you're, I don't know, an office assistant and you're just starting off, if you don't know the work at first, you just have to keep at it. And then you'll get, rolling and knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's usually, yeah. I was going to say something and then it just like...
Yeah. I've been doing that a lot.
Yeah. But, like, tell me about your college days, because I know, you spoke about how this is the time that you got help and everything. So
Yeah.
let's go dive deeper into
Okay,
it.
wow. Yeah, here we go. I think I started college in 2013, and I went to Ringling College of Art and Design in Sarasota, Florida. I didn't put a lot of effort into applying for colleges. I think I applied for 4 total.
Oh my God, same.
Yeah, and it's hard when you're a kid, when you're 17 or 18 and you're out of high school and now people expect you to kind of like pick that one thing you want to do and go hard at it and then make that your life. And so I applied to 4 schools. One of them was RISD, Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah.
Rhode Island Institute College Design, RISD,
Yeah.
And I remember seeing like I had followed a lot of the artists who went to school there online, and I really liked their website, and I was really like into the kind of like art culture that surrounded that school. So I thought that that was my place. Like, that's where I want to go. That's where I belong. And I worked the hardest at my portfolio for that school, and I got rejected. I got put on a waiting list, and I was so sad. But anyway, so Ringling was one of the schools that I went to physically to visit before officially deciding I was going to go there. And when I got there, I realized that it was like my place. Everyone there looked like me, like kind of like awkward, nerdy, artsy kid, like everyone loved Ghibli movies and played video games and like collected figurines and did all the nerdy things that I did that I thought I was so weird for doing. And so I went, I did their illustration program there. And the first year, my freshman year, was really hard. It was my first time away from home, really. And I was living with another girl in like a one-room, like a dorm room.
Yeah.
And I don't know if y'all have ever lived in like a dorm room with one person, but it is not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do. Yeah, and I really struggled with that because I'm very introverted and I'm not used to sharing a space that close to someone. Like sleeping was hard, like getting up in the morning was hard. Yeah, it was there was a lot of anxiety there for me. And I eventually moved into my own dorm room because I felt like it would give me the best chance at like having a good time, like a normal time. But at that point I started to kind of like isolate myself a little bit. So it went from like one end to the other.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it was a really hard year. And at the end of the year, I was like, I don't think I can do this. like it was so hard. And I think I went from being like a big fish in a little pond to a little fish in like a fucking ocean. And I was really intimidated by all the competition that was out there, not realizing that it would make me so much better. But yeah, and my parents were going through, my mom and my stepdad were going through a divorce at the time. So it was very like, it was looking to be financially stressful at the time.
Yeah.
So after that first year, I left and I went to New Hampshire Institute of Art because they had a ceramics program and they gave
Ooh.
me a big scholarship. So I felt like I could pursue illustration and ceramics at the same time and do it on a budget and not have to think about or stress about my financial situation as much. And then I was still feeling like very isolated and stressed out. Yeah, and I at that point I did one semester and then I went back home to Philadelphia and I commuted to University of the Arts for a semester. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm like nervous tapping on everything. Yeah, so I jumped around a lot because I didn't know what I wanted. I was feeling like really anxious and overwhelmed, and I was dealing with like all of these feelings that I didn't really know what they meant, you know? And after spending a full year outside of Ringling and still wanting to pursue art, I realized that I needed to go back to Ringling because no one had the equipment they had. No one had the professors they had. And honestly, the students that, like, the work that was coming out of that school was some of the best I'd seen for what I wanted to do. So I was like, I'm going to have to go back there and just suck it up and figure out, like, what the hell I'm going to do. And so that was my sophomore year there. It was like my third year of school total, but it was my sophomore year at Ringling. And my IBS was getting bad. I was eating like super healthy, like gluten-free, like vegan, and I was just like going through like these cycles of like belly aches and nausea and just feeling like really bad and run down all the time. And it was affecting my attendance to my classes. And then that was even more stressful. And it got to the point where I was forcing myself to get up and go to class, but I was starting to kind of like disassociate from my environment. So I'd get to class and I'd feel really like in my head, and I would feel really sick, like really nauseous and sweaty. And I got really scared because at some points I felt like I was waking up and realizing I was in a room that I didn't know exactly where I was. Yeah, and so I really was like freaked out at this point because I was like, I need help. So I went to the therapists that they have at the school, and this had been my first therapy since I was a kid. So yeah, but it got to the point where I had been going for maybe a couple months, and they were kind of like, okay, like, it seems like maybe, like you're not creating enough serotonin in your brain. naturally.
Yeah.
And honestly, they put me on a small dose of an SSRI, and that was enough to put my IBS in remission.
Wow.
Yeah, and they also gave me like a couple like Ativan for PRN use. So like if I was actively having an anxiety attack, I could take one
Yeah.
and lay down and wake up and be better. Yeah, and so those two things were kind of enough to, with continuing therapy, was enough to kind of inch me to a more healthier place where I could go to class and not feel sick or scared or not know where I was. Yeah.
That's good.
Small steps, but
Yeah. No, it's always about the small steps. You know, if you don't put work into it, you know, then you can't get better. And
Yeah.
it's all about the little tiny things that you do that makes everything like just a little bit better.
yeah.
Like forcing yourself to get up in the day when you don't want to get up, or forcing yourself to go on a walk. I'm so bad. I need to go on a walk all the
Oh
time.
man,
but
me too. Let's go on walks together. Yeah.
would love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and we don't have to go the whole hour. We can do like 45 minutes. It's okay. Because I know it's definitely a lot, but but so have you ever had an encounter with, let's say, suicide, or with anything like really strong that you felt like, oh gosh, I just can't keep going anymore?
I think in college when I realized I needed to go to therapy, I didn't have suicidal tendencies or thoughts, but I was definitely feeling very hopeless. Like, and I did go to the emergency room a couple times because I was so sick and I really thought I was like dying.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that was like a scary tipping point for me. But I've never actually, honestly, not until recently, struggled with like suicidal thoughts. I think with like the freelance I've been doing the last 2 years, maybe like a couple weeks ago, I had a first couple thoughts about like suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
Super light, you know. And it honestly, it's not super concerning to me because I know that it's kind of like a symptom of depression.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not scared that those thoughts are in my head sometimes, you know. But they do come up when I'm starting to feel like really hopeless. And I'm like, it would be easier to kill myself than continue working on this fucking book that I'm doing.
I get that.
And that, like, that sounds really bad. But like, and sometimes it's like funny bad. And sometimes it's like, oh, Dana, go to therapy. But yeah, so not until recently, I guess. Yeah, with like, say, like suicidal thoughts or tendencies. But I've definitely felt like this overwhelming like hopelessness where I just wanted to lay on the ground forever, and I felt like I really needed help. Yeah.
I understand that. I think my first encounter with it wasn't directly like, oh, I want to die, but it was more of, I would like to just curl up in a corner, have no one near me, have no one talk to me, just like, if I could not exist, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that sorry, just wanted to ask you,
No,
do you think, does that come with like feelings where you just kind of want to be like in bed all day? Like, do those relate for you, or are those separate like feelings, you know? Like,
Those are definitely separate feelings.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Are they for you? Like,
Well, I don't know. I think sometimes, especially when I'm very depressed, or when I do have like those small suicidal thoughts, I often just want to be asleep. Yeah, like being asleep sounds better than anything else. Sometimes, yeah, you know.
okay. I really wish mine would be like that.
Yeah.
Because that would be so much more calming.
Yeah.
No, I get like completely itchy. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you know, the inside of my arm, like where
Oh,
it bends. Yeah, that gets so itchy. And then I start like thinking about ways to, you know, do the act or whatever. And then it turns into like wanting to really do it. But then not being able to because I'm like, well, I have my fiance, and how about my family and my friends, and you know, I feel like I'd be a burden, you know.
If you did
Done
the
it.
act.
Yeah,
Yes, I totally
yeah.
get that. I feel that too.
Yeah, so you know, and instead of doing it, I've only had one experience where, and I talked about this in the last podcast, the last episode, where it was like an epiphany that it was like so sudden that I had to just completely do it. Like this was the answer. Like it was the solution to all of my problems.
Talking about this.
Yeah. And it was like instant, you know. Suddenly everything, I didn't have my glasses on and my vision became clear. Like HD and everything. Yeah, it was really scary, and I think that was the tipping point for me to go get psychiatric help. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, cuz I went to therapy when I was in college, but they never told me that I could get like medicine or anything.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Sometimes you really have to push for like a psychiatrist and someone, a psychiatrist who is willing to give you, you know, like meds. Yeah, definitely.
And I had such a skewed view of medication as well.
Oh my gosh, me too. Yeah, growing up. But I think that's a symptom of our culture.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Definitely, because they always tell you, "Oh, you're messing with your body. You know, you're messing with your
brain
head.
chemistry is gonna change in the worst of ways," and it's like, oh, not true.
And it didn't help that the group that I was in, because I was in both individual therapy and group therapy.
Okay, yeah.
So it didn't help that the group therapy that I was in, the people there who were taking medication, they were like, "Oh, it's just so bad," and I'm like feeling so dead, and they were like, I don't know what medication they were on,
Not
but
selling
it was,
it for you, huh?
Yeah, no, it was not good. So I was like, oh, I don't want to be on that. Like they're trying to get off of it, and they're like freaking out. I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
So it took me a while, especially when my therapist was like, I can't help you here. Like, you have to go to a psychiatrist.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Yeah.
But, I mean, so what is your experience with therapy now?
So right now I go to therapy once a week. It's a mixture of DBT and CBT. Yeah. But I went in. I think it was CBT when I went in, and and so I pushed for the DBT aspect because for a couple years now I deal with like reacting very badly, like. And I think it has a lot to do with, like, you know, the way I was brought up, like who my parents are, what their mental health is like. But my tendency to, like, react to things is very strong, and not be able to properly, like, work through those things before you, like the impulse to just say something crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And so like I was like, "Doc, I want to do DBT and I need you to recommend a workbook for me." And she was like, "Okay, yeah." And so now I have a workbook, and I try to do about a chapter a week or a half a chapter a week, so that I have some tools that I'm learning as I go and as I do my therapy. And then I actually have created this little booklet for myself where I write down my thoughts or concerns or things I want to talk about in therapy for the week. And then when I get out of therapy that day, I write down like what we've talked about. And then, so that's kind of my process with therapy right now. Yeah.
See, everyone, this is how you should do it.
Go to therapy.
Go to therapy and be very involved. And, if you need a workbook, ask for it.
And even if you're super neurotypical, go to therapy. You're not going to regret it. It's not a waste of time. It's not a waste of money.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's expensive, but
it's very expensive. But nowadays, insurance really they're starting to cover a lot of behavioral therapy. So, I feel like there's no excuse.
yeah.
When my therapy wasn't being covered by my insurance, I called the therapist and really had a one-on-one with her and was like, hey, I really don't have the money to pay you, but I really need this. And she was like, that's okay. We're going to lower the price for you, and we're going to work through this. And I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, a lot of times therapy is a sliding scale. So a lot of therapists will help you depending on what your budget's like.
Yeah, and there's also what's it called? Catholic Charities, if you're in New Jersey. I don't know if they have Catholic Charities outside of New Jersey. But I know it's 41 minutes.
Yeah, no, but you gotta do a whole thing.
It's 41 minutes. It's okay if we go a little over. I mean, it's like 15 minutes left. We can keep talking for 15 minutes, right?
You can also edit out any of my yammering if you want.
No way. All of this is gonna stay.
Oh.
It's all gonna stay in the podcast, like all of it.
Okay. So go on, Queen. Yeah.
So for me, it's so hard though. Like to do all of that, it is so hard because I was in an intensive therapy program, and it was like a partial care program. So it was for 3 days, half days, and I would just go there. We would have groups, and then we would have a therapy session. And the groups that we had were all DBT based.
Yeah.
And I was like so frustrated with it because I said, you know what? This is really nice and it's very helpful. But if I could do all of these things, I wouldn't be here. If I could manage to calm myself down, I would not be here.
Yeah. Right.
So I understand that it's all about the practice and writing things down and doing the work in a workbook. My stomach is growling. Sorry about that. Doing things in a workbook. But at the same time, I feel like there's so many people who have the same experience that it's like it's so hard to actually keep up with that and to actually work through a workbook and try to complete the chapters and everything. Like I have a binder and a workbook, and I still haven't been able to complete any of it. And
that's so valid too, because that's not everyone's style for sure. Yeah. Not everyone is the type of person who wants, can, or needs to be doing chapters.
So I definitely share it with people though. Like on my blog, I'm like, here's some DBT skills that can really help you. Because yes, it's very helpful. And if you read through it and you sort of understand, like, you know what, this is very accurate. Maybe if I breathed a little more, or if I counted a little more, maybe just looked at the colors of the trees or something and try to put my mind in a different spot than what it's currently at, then a lot of the problems wouldn't be the same. And I've tried practicing that, and it does really help. It's just that to continue on doing it, it's so hard.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, like last week well, actually it was the beginning of, yeah, today's Sunday. So last week I was having an anxiety attack kind of throughout the day. Mild, but it was persistent, like just throughout the day. And I was like, maybe if I do a chapter of my DBT workbook, I'll feel better. Like maybe if I and I'm trying to like actively remember like what the steps are. I'm trying to relax. I'm trying to breathe. And I'm like, this is bullshit. Like this isn't helping. So like it can be frustrating. And sometimes that's not the thing that's going to work, you know?
Definitely. I think what's really worked for me, definitely medication. I think, my body though, it's a tough cookie to crack because I get, it gets used to medication quickly. So then I have to up the dose and continue doing that. It's like, it's just a cycle. So as oh, you can turn that light off. It's okay.
I know.
But as, time keeps going on, I have to get a higher dosage of medication. So that's kind of bumming me out because at some point, I'm going to get to the highest dose and I can't keep going up. So I can't just rely on medication alone. And I've been going to therapy and my therapist is incredible. She's so great. But at the same time, it's like I never really know what kind of problems to talk about because I don't really have any problems, Like, there's nothing going on in my life that is negative for me to be feeling depressed.
But that's not always how it works, right?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
So she's very nice. Like if I say like, oh, I'm falling down deeper, she's like, okay, we're gonna start doing some DBT work. We're gonna start breathing exercises. We're gonna get you okay. You're gonna be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, what do I do when I notice myself falling into this hole? That's where I really need the help in.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And especially when when you're aware of like when you're kind of getting there or when you think you might be kind of going down deeper, like seeing it, addressing it is kind of like the first step, like you notice it and then what can you do to kind of help with that?
Yeah. And I think that's where I'm at right now. I think, definitely I'm at this place where I'm noticing it and I'm living through that first stage and I don't know what to do because I can open up that DBT book, but the DBT book is for when something's currently going on,
right? Yeah.
So I'm not having an anxiety attack, I'm not having negative thoughts, I'm not having anything. It's just a feeling like I feel like I'm slowly slipping into this like little hole.
How does that how does where you're at now with that relate to your art and to your relationship with art?
It's very interesting because I've been producing a lot more art.
Yeah, you seem like a busy woman. Yeah, you're really producing a lot of stuff right now, which is kind of really cool.
So it's crazy because this is my most productive point. Even though I'm slipping into a depression, it's my most productive point that I've ever been at. Like, even when I was, like, much better than where I am now, I wasn't producing as much as I am now. So I think, like, as long as I'm in this sort of weird balance state, I'm like, okay, well, I want to express myself.
Yeah.
Which is very weird. I wonder why I don't bother expressing myself when I'm fine. It's a good question.
That's relatable, though.
Yeah.
Especially for artists in general. Like artists are tortured souls, and we typically create not when things feel like homeostasis, like we're creating when things feel kind of crazy or out of control, or when we're feeling all the feels or absolutely none of the feels, But I don't know, when you're feeling neurotypical, it's just like, what am I supposed to create about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, 49 minutes, 50, we're at 50 minutes. We have 5 more minutes to chat it up, and then I'll do a closing.
Sounds good.
So, I just want to get your thoughts on talking about this. And I know in the car you said that you didn't really think about this. Or
Yeah, I'm super, I feel, I was nervous to have this talk with you just because it's not something I've ever really talked about before, really, or even really thought a lot about. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think, sorry for all of the weird pauses, and I'm just trying to work through these things in my brain as I talk about them. Yeah, because it all feels very new to me. Yeah.
No, that's good. That's sort of the point as well of this podcast, because we want to discover new things. We don't just want to spit out the things that we already know.
Yeah.
It's a discussion,
Yeah.
and discussions don't lead anywhere if you're not, discovering something new.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's a very big part of it. I really enjoyed talking to you. And if I ever get any more questions, I will pick your brain.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you
Of
for having
course.
me. This has been really, really cool. I'm honored.
Okay. So do you have any plugs you wanna?
Oh, no.
No.
No plug.
No Instagram. No.
Nope, nothing.
Nothing.
I don't know. I mean, I
Okay.
have an Instagram. It's Dana Kalnick. That's it. I
Okay.
guess. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for that.
So that was Dana Kalnick. And this was Depression Grove. So, guys, please follow the blog, WordPress, Depression Grove. You can go to Instagram, Depression Grove. You can go to SoundCloud under Ashley Betances, and you can also go to YouTube under Ashley Betances. So, yeah, see you next time.